Thanks, Denise. All right. What does it mean to be a woman in our modern world? That's our topic for today. I thought it was quite timely for Mother's Day. And as promised last week, I'm going to begin with something fun. So last week I looked at the top 10 benefits of being a man. This week, the top 10 benefits of being a woman. So number 1, taxis stop for us as women. Number 2, we got off the Titanic first. Number 3, we've never lusted after a cartoon character or central figure in a computer game. Interesting. Number 4, we don't look like a frog in a blender when dancing. Number 5, we can congratulate a teammate without ever having to slap them on the backside. Number 6, we don't need to break wind to amuse ourselves. Number 7, there are times when chocolate really can solve all our problems. Number 8, we can be groupies. Male groupies are stalkers. Number 9, we can fully assess a person just by looking at their shoes. And number 10, we look cute in our boyfriend's clothes. They look like idiots in ours. Well, like last week, that's about where the fun stops for this topic, sadly. The reason being that experts are telling us that there is a crisis among young women today. Now, the data I'm about to share with you is from the US, but it translates pretty accurately to all Western countries. And the data says this, that from 2004 to 2012, the number of teenage girls who had major depression sat at around 12%. But in 2012, that number started to go up, and today it is sitting at around 30%. 1 in 3 girls from age 12 to 17 are suffering from major depression in the West. Now, an argument can be made to say that, look, Western society is now more open to talking about mental health. So perhaps it's always been the case that teenage girls have been sitting at around 30% suffering from major depression. We just didn't talk about it before. Now, the problem with that argument is that the rates of self-harm and suicide have also followed this same trend line. And those numbers are not affected by how open we are to talking about mental health. Now, these are some terrifying stats, are they not? Even if you don't have a daughter who's about to enter that age bracket. So what I want to do today is to ask where this crisis might be coming from and see if we cannot speak into it. Now, having said that, I understand it is a little weird for a man to be standing up the front and talking about how to be a real woman. All right? But please know, I'm not talking from experience here. Right? There are some biological males on the internet these days who like to talk about their experience as a woman. I'm not one of them. What I can do, though, and this is what I'm going to be doing today, is I'm going to be exegeting. What does that mean? It means unpacking our culture and unpacking the Bible on what it means to be a woman today. But I am acknowledging the dangers here. One of our young ones said to me a little earlier on, don't get cancelled today, Brendan. All right, no pressure. So all I can do is ask you to be as patient with me as a man as I've tried to be as gentle and respectful in what I'm about to say to the women. Now, having said that, I've got 3 points today to help us unpack what it means to be a happy and fulfilled woman in modern-day Australia. And as it turns out, it's pretty similar to what we looked at last week when it came to men. So we're going to begin by looking at some of the unhelpful messages that women are being fed today. So I've titled that, What Women Are Currently Hearing. We're then going to apply some ancient wisdom, some biblical wisdom to our current cultural moment. And I've titled that, What Women Need to Hear. And then we'll conclude with our application, which is what women need to do. So, look, pretty much a carbon copy of last week's sermon, only tailored for women. And in the same vein, like I said, it's a topical sermon, so we're going to have question time at the end, if you have any concerns or if there are things that I don't cover. And like last week's sermon, you don't need to be a young woman or a teenage girl to actually find this relevant. The reason being that, like last week, part of the cause of the current crisis among our young women is the messages that have been sent by society, right? And so we as a society need to make sure that we are sending better messages. So I pray you can stick with me as we look at what real womanhood looks like according to our ancient wisdom. And first up, I want to look at some of the unhelpful messages that Western culture has been feeding women over the past few decades. Now, I can't cover everything in under 10 minutes, so I'm just going to give you 3 of the main things that I've noticed over the last couple of decades. And the first is that Western culture has a tendency to tell women that they can and should have it all in life. Now, this finds its roots in second and third wave feminism. And like I said last week, feminism is a good thing, okay? We need to be advocating for the rights of women so long as there are people and structures out there that are trying to take those rights away. And in a fallen world, that will always be the case. But like all human institutions, feminism has its faults. And one of those faults was how second wave feminism, now that's feminism from the 60s and 70s, it's called second wave feminism, it told women that if you are a stay-at-home mum, then you are not contributing to society. Now, thankfully, third wave feminism, that's from the 90s and the noughties, corrected this by saying, look, women can stay at home if they want, or they can go out and have a career. But one of the unfortunate outcomes of all this is that some women seem to think that they can have a high-powered full-time career and be a full-time mum and have everything else in life as well. And depending on how much support these women get from their husbands, it has actually left many modern women utterly exhausted. Now, there's no simple solution for this. I don't have one. Some women really benefit from their careers. Some households need double income. It's quite difficult in our modern society. I think such couples need to figure out some sort of compromise. So that's what Deb and I have done. She's working 3 days a week, and we've tried to figure out some sort of compromise, and we get it right sometimes, not all the time. But I think the message that women should and therefore must have it all has actually left a lot of our women really exhausted in the modern world. All right, the second message that women have been getting over the last couple of decades is that in order to be happy as women, women need to behave more like men. So I'll give you one example of this. You might have, you no doubt know the show Sex and the City, right? Sex and the City is about 4 glamorous women who are living the good life in New York City. And the message this TV show sends is that in order for women to be happy and successful and fulfilled in life, they need to be what? Well, firstly, they need to be single, right? Second, they need to have super successful careers. And third, they need to be able to sleep with as many men as they want with no consequences. Now, here's the thing. When you hear the words committophobe, right, got to be single, when you hear the word workaholic, right, married to your successful career, and when you hear the word promiscuous, right, sleep with a new person every couple of episodes, who do you naturally think of? For me, it's men. But it's not good men. It's like dodgy men, the kind of men you should avoid in a relationship. Yet that is what Sex and the City has been glamorizing. It's been telling women that in order to be happy, you need to behave like some of the worst men in society. The third thing I want to mention is social media. There's a researcher, a professor in the States called Jonathan Haidt, and he's just released, just in the last couple of weeks, a new book. I haven't read it yet, but it's called The Anxious Generation. And in it, he says the steep incline in mental illness and suicide among teenage girls coincided with the introduction of the smartphone. Now, why is that? Well, partly it's because people can now take selfies of themselves and post it immediately and watch the likes in real time. All right? But alongside that, you don't need to get in front of a computer to scroll through social media anymore. If you have a spare minute, even if you don't, if you're in the middle of a class, you can just sit there. And women, like young girls, are spending upwards of 6 to 8 hours a day surfing social media. Now, social media is not evil in and of itself, though I should say that the algorithm and advertisers are exploiting people's vulnerabilities and insecurities. We should be aware of that and warned about that. But at its core, social media is an information sharing platform. Right? That's where you can find out what your friends are up to. And it can be quite helpful in that. The problem for young women, though, excuse me, is it feeds one of their main vices. That is the sin of envy. So in her book, Compared to Her, author Sophie DeWitt talks about how women struggle with comparing themselves up and comparing themselves down to different people. Now, what does she mean by comparing up and comparing down? Let me give you an example of each from the book. So comparing up, one woman says this: look, I put on an outfit that I know I look good in and I feel great until I get to the party. Then I see someone who looks slimmer, cooler, and classier than me, and I feel fat, frumpy, and dull. Right? So that's comparing up. Then there's comparing down. Another woman says, look, we know women who spend all their money on things they don't need. I'm so glad that we don't splash the cash like they do. Now, whether you're comparing up to people you wish you were like, or comparing down to people you're glad you're not like, you are committing the sin of envy. And here's the thing: social media drowns us in that. It shows us countless thin, beautiful people living glamorous lives to make us feel like we're less than them. Or it makes us feel that we need to get online and show the world that we too are living beautiful, glamorous lives. Now, couple this with the fact that the friends we have online are not real connections. People we follow online are not real connections. They're fake connections. And if you fill your life with fake connections, it leaves you feeling empty and lonely. Right? Throw all this together, and is it any wonder that our young women are suffering a crisis of mental health right now? So, excuse me, this morning, a bit croaky. That's a bit about what young women are currently being bombarded with. Now, like I said, it's not an exhaustive list. I could have spoken about the over-sexualization of women. I could have talked about how sending nude selfies to your boyfriend is now the norm among some teenage girls. I could talk about how man-bashing is really cool these days. You know, we don't need no man. Or I could talk about how millions and millions of young girls are now doing webcam porn. It's terrifying. It's very, very difficult being a young girl today. So, next question is, what should young women be listening to or hearing? Well, again, I cannot cover the full gamut of the Bible's teaching for women, so I'm just going to give us 3 pieces of ancient wisdom that will hopefully try and speak into this crisis. And the first is this: we should not be limiting women on what they can do. Now, the passage that we just read before, Proverbs 31, it can be a little daunting for some women. When they read this, they go, oh my goodness, this woman does have it all. She does do it all. But it's actually not so. Now, it's a little obscured in the English, but this passage, the wife of noble character, is actually an acrostic poem. Now, what's an acrostic poem? It's a poem in which each new line starts with the next letter of the Hebrew alphabet. We can't see that in English, but it's an acrostic poem. Now, what that means is this passage is not prescriptive of what women should be like. It is simply descriptive of what this author has seen in noble women. Right? This is not the Apostle Paul saying, you must do this. This is a poet stringing together pearls. Right? And those pearls are things that he has seen in women of noble character. And you'll notice what this woman does. I mean, Barbara talked about it before. She looks after her husband and her children, all right? But she also makes money. She buys a field or she sells clothing. She looks after the poor, and she also brings her husband honor. And so what this passage says is that women can have a career if they want. They can be a stay-at-home mum if they want. They can volunteer and help out the poor if they want. Or they can do a combination of all of the above, as this woman does. All right? Proverbs 31 opens up a world of possibilities for women. It's a great passage. Having said that, the second piece of ancient wisdom I want to mention is that the Bible says that men and women are different. All right, so I'll just read to you one verse. This is Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Now, all four of my kids knew that there was a difference between boys and girls before they reached the age of 3. Sadly, many college professors don't know this anymore. There's this push out there that men and women are the same. They're interchangeable. But the Bible is clear on this. God has made men and women differently. Now, men and women are completely equal in the sight of God. God does not think that men are better than women overall or that women are better than men overall. But he has given us different skills and gifts. And so there are things in life that men will just naturally be better than women at, and there are things in life that women will just naturally be better than men at because of how God has made them. Right? And to say otherwise, for fear of offending some woke troll on the internet, you're just asking for trouble, right? When you lie about things, bad things are coming your way. And so instead of claiming that men and women are interchangeable, as some voices today are doing, we need to embrace the differences that God has designed into humanity. Now, there are varying, there's the varying cross-section between men and women, but in general, here's some examples, all right? Men are generally interested in things more than people, whereas women are generally interested in people more than things. Neither is wrong. Right? When making decisions, men generally think more logically, which is their superpower, and women generally think more empathetically, which is their superpower. And when working in a team environment, men often want to be out the front, making decisions, getting things done, whereas women often want to ensure that the team is holding together and everyone is okay. Both are good things. And so we need to stop thinking that the measure of a woman is to compare her to a man. The Bible says that God made men and women differently. And this is why the woman of Proverbs 31 does not do everything. Right, I'll give you an example. She does not pick up a sword and go to war. Now, here's the thing. If the hordes are at the gate, by all means, women fight for your life. But according to the Bible, one of the differences between men and women is that it is only men who are called to go off to war and kill people. We've sort of started to blur those lines in society today. It wasn't actually a controversial thing to say this 15 years ago. I might get cancelled for saying it today. But that's what the Bible says. Now, feel free to ask me a question about this afterwards. I'm happy to take questions. But war is one of those ways in which men are told to protect women. And I pray that we overall can embrace the differences between men and women rather than claiming that men and women are the same. The third thing I want to mention to our women today is that you are enough. The sin of envy comes from the inbuilt desire that all humans have to be presentable. All right, we talked about this a few weeks ago, right? If you're going on a first date with someone you really like, what do? You make yourself as presentable as you can, all right? So guys, they'll get their back waxed, they'll pluck their monobrow, and they might even have a shower. Well, at least shower in a can, right? Women will also do their best to look their best. And the reason we want to be presentable is because we crave connections. But here's the thing. If we see someone who's more presentable than us, right, slimmer, cooler, classier than us, then we see that as a threat to our presentability and therefore as a threat to our connections. Now, the treatment for this condition, and Sophie DeWitt talks about this in her book, the treatment for comparing up or comparing down is to remember that we are beautiful, cool, and classy to the only set of eyes that matters in the universe. See, if you're a Christian, do you realise that God chose you before he even began to create the world? If you're a Christian, do you realise that God saved you some 2,000 years before you were even born? right? God called you. He regenerated you. He sent his spirit to take up residence inside of you. He adopted you into his family. He protects you, and he is working in you right now to make you the most Christ-like version of yourself you can be. Do you understand that if you're in a relationship with God, he praises you? Right? Remember, this is how the book of Proverbs closes. Read Proverbs verse 31 for me. No, verse 30. Proverbs 31, verse 30. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Ladies, doesn't matter how you look compared to others. Doesn't matter how successful you are compared to others, how fashionable you are compared to others. Doesn't matter whether you're married or not. It doesn't matter how your marriage is going or how your kids are going. What matters is that if you fear the Lord, you are enough in the eyes of the most important person in existence who praises you. Right? Now, if you only take one thing away from today, I pray you don't take any of the controversial stuff away. This is what I want you to take away. You are enough. You are enough. So, that's the Bible's teaching for women. Well, some of it, anyway. This leaves one final question. What do women need to do to be this praiseworthy woman of noble character? Actually have God praising you. Well, again, for the sake of time, let's just look at three things. And look, I just want to say, I don't mean to be controversial about this. So last week, I played hardball with the guys, and I said, guys, just get off gaming altogether. Now, I'm pretty sure a total of 0 people followed that advice. My hope is they're at least regulating themselves a bit better now. All right? For the ladies, I'm not going to say get off social media altogether, though that's what I truly think. Right? If there is something in your life that is giving you a 30% chance of developing a debilitating, if not life-threatening mental illness, why would you run the risk? But I know if I say that, all of 0 of you are going to listen to me. So here's my advice today. Regulate your social media. Regulate your social media. Right? The jury is in on this. Social media gives people a dopamine hit just like porn or drugs do. But they've actually got research showing that if a person sees their phone on the other side of the room, they actually get a dopamine hit before they even pick it up and check it. We need to regulate ourselves. So how do we do this? Number 1, regulate who you follow. Right? Stop following the Kardashians or all those crazy influencers online. Just be friends with people you are friends with in real life. All right? Number 2, regulate your time. Give yourself a half hour in the morning or thereabouts and a half hour at night. And in between those times, don't open up TikTok or Instagram. And number 3, get an accountability partner to help you, right? Guys have this. We've had this set up for porn for years. You can do the same thing when it comes to social media, all right? Find someone that you can help each other with, all right? So self-control is not saying, oh, I can do it all myself, right? Self-control is putting structures in place to help you do it. So find a good friend and keep each other accountable. How are you going with social media this week? How many hours have you spent each day? That's number 1, regulate yourself. Application number 2. Stop thinking that you have to have it all now. There's actually a name for people who think they have to have it all now. It's called FOMO. It stands for fear of missing out. All right? See, FOMO means you have to watch every sporting match. You have to go to every concert, be at every catch-up, attend every party, see as much of the world as you can, be as successful as you can, and don't let anyone stand in the way of that. Now, if this life is all there is, well, then you have to be that selfish, don't you? You have to suck the marrow out of life. Yet as Christians, we know there is an eternity waiting for us beyond this world that is filled with the best music, the most enjoyable people, the most epic parties, and the most breathtaking scenery imaginable, right? Stop thinking we have to have it all now. Let's put FOMO to death. Third and finally, and probably most importantly, join a church and be there every week. The curious anomaly in Jonathan Haidt's research, right? That's the guy I mentioned before. He said that women who are part of a religious community have not seen that frightening jump in mental illness. Isn't that fascinating? Now, there's several reasons for that, right? Firstly, it's because they actually still have real connections in their life. Their life is not filled with fake connections. It's filled with real connections, with real people who are looking after them and caring for them. And number two, it means they are surrounded by role models. All right, in Titus chapter 2, Paul commands, this is one of the commands, he commands older women to be teaching younger women. And that's what we do as a church. Right? I think any parent of young girls or any young woman today who is not a member of a church community is doing themselves an enormous disservice. Like I suggest looking at the research. It's quite fascinating. Church brings a sense of belonging, a sense of community, and a sense of acceptance that just makes women happier. And guess what? We here are all part of that, whether you're male or female. We're part of helping the mental health of our fellow citizens, our fellow members. And that's the Bible's teaching, the Bible's ancient wisdom for modern women. All right? Embrace that God has made you female. Stop comparing yourself to men. Know that you are enough. Stop comparing yourselves to other women. Regulate your fake connections that mess with your mental health and work hard at fostering real connections. Number one, with God, and number two, with his people. For charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give you 30 seconds or so to have a think, and we'll see if there's any questions. Donna does not need 30 seconds. And can I just preface everything by saying, please be gentle with me. Go. So the question is, the stats of women in churches, is that for all ages? So I think the stats that they've been looking at, so the increase in mental illness, and that includes self-harm and suicide, that has been primarily among teenage girls. And so that spike, you can watch it, you can look at the graph. So from 2004 to 2012, and then 2012 it starts to go up and up and up. And then in I think it was 2020, it went up again, which they think has to do with TikTok. So around 2018, 2019, it started to level out, then it went up again because of TikTok. I think, but what they've said is young girls, like teenage girls and young women who are in a church have not seen that increase. So I think the stats are specifically for the young girls. Women in their 40s and 50s and 60s have not seen that same increase. And I think it's because those women have not grown up with social media. So it's the same with guys growing up with online porn compared to my generation. We didn't have that. There's a massive difference. And so it's primarily, this crisis is primarily among young teenage girls, and that will trickle into the young 20s. Yeah. Yes. Louise. Yes. Sorry, Louise. Mm-hmm. Yes, so instead, yeah, so that's great Great point. Thank you, Louise. So if you're not going to spend 6 to 8 hours scrolling through social media, what are you going to do instead? And Louise has the best advice is open your Bible instead. I think that's a great thing. Number one, so that's what I was trying to say in the last line. I mean, look, again, I couldn't fit everything into a 25-minute sermon. Number one, work on your relationship with God. Number two, work on your relationship with your neighbours. And so there's two things you can do. Instead of scrolling through Instagram in the morning, open your Bible in the morning, and then start spending some time with your friends or neighbours. There's two excellent examples. But thank you, Louise. Yes. Yes, David.
Brenda, it would appear domestic violence is the rigor right now.
Yep.
Everything I see in media reflecting on domestic violence. It constitutes domestic violence. And you're quoting a statistic. I'm challenging statistics because you have to look at the parameters of which those statistics are drawn from.
Yep.
Now, I go back to when I was younger and read about the 6 o'clock swill. Australia rode on the sheep's back. The shearer was a tough shearing man, a tough drinking man, went home and beat up the missus.
Yes.
That was the connotation of the Australian man. Yet now, the allegation is that domestic violence is an all-time regular.
So the question is basically, do I have a view on domestic violence and what's going on at the moment? So I was actually asked this question in the evening service last week. And so what I would say, so domestic violence stems from a need for control. That's the baseline. So you have whoever is perpetrating the violence, and it is primarily husbands perpetrating against wives or men perpetrating against women, but it's not solely, all right? But it's like 70 to 80%, it's men being violent against their wives. And where it stems from is a need to control the other person. Now, that generally comes from significant mental illness. If you hit a woman, there is something significantly wrong with you, like significantly wrong. So that is an absolute no-no. And I said last week, the minute a man raises a hand against a woman, he ceases to be a man. All right? There is something significantly wrong with that. But domestic violence is broader than just physical violence. It can be financial, it can be verbal, it can be emotional, it can be sexual, it can be spiritual. All these different ways in which men try to control, or, when one partner tries to control the other partner. The question last week was, how do we fix that? And my answer is, I don't know. And neither do the experts. I read a newspaper article last week that said we should be doing a royal commission into this. I actually have been convinced that that's a good idea because we don't know where it's coming from and we don't know how to fix it. And a royal commission will give us a complete study into that. We'll be able to look at the reasons behind it. We'll be able to look at what works in fixing it and what doesn't work, and we might be able to put in things in place to stop it. But my overall comment to say to you, David, is, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, is domestic violence is completely unacceptable. And I pray that if you do have a need to control someone, you get off to counselling immediately before you do significant damage to yourself and others. And there is no place for that. But I think we do need a very wide-ranging study into how to fix it because it is a serious problem. Is it as serious as the media is making out? I don't know. But if it happens just once, it's bad. But there is a lot of it going on. And so I think we need to address that. But thank you. Yes, Sharon. Sorry, can someone... Oh, does domestic violence run in families? Yes, I think it does. And it's to do with that role model thing that I was talking about before. So if a young person grows up seeing that this is how you treat the opposite sex, that's the model that they're going to follow later in life. And so that's why you need to break that sort of cycle right? And that is only going to come through counselling, in my opinion. Yeah. And that's why having good role models around you, like at church, is awesome. We have wonderful men and women here who treat each other with absolute dignity and respect, and I think it's wonderful. Anyone else? Yeah, Karen, go. Carol, go. Yeah. Yeah, so Carol, yeah, thanks, Carol. I mean, it's not so much a question, but just to say that she has seen articles and TV shows and documentaries about how insidious screens can be in young people's lives. And it's very easy for parents who are busy to say, all right, I'm just going to give you the electronic babysitter for a little while. It ruins their kids, and it gets them to be addicted very early on. There's actually the study that says when kids go through puberty, there's a particular hormone in their brain that switches off, and that is like a type of self-control hormone, and it switches off to actually get them through puberty. But what we're doing is we're putting in front of them an addictive substance at the exact time where they don't actually have the hormone to be able to control it. It's really bad, really insidious. So it's difficult. Look, I am a parent today. I know how hard it is, but we need to do our best to be as careful as we can in raising our kids. It's not easy. I think we've got time for maybe one more, if there is. Nope. All right. Well, we're going to stand and sing now. We're going to sing this great old hymn that talks about how whether you're a man or a woman, you are enough in the eyes of your God. Let's stand and sing When I Survey.